The salt lagoon shimmered under the early dawn like a sheet of liquid rose quartz. Microalgae painted the shallow water in pastel pinks and muted corals, the color shifting with every ripple. Except today, there were no ripples. The water lay flat. Too flat. A solitary lesser flamingo, known to researchers as coral, slept standing on one leg, her head tucked backward beneath her wing. Normally she would sway gently with the tide's pulse, the subtle back and forth motion that kept the lagoon alive. But this morning, her feathers did not stir. Her reflection did not tremble. The water did not move. The tide, expected hours ago, had never come. On the dry bank, Dr. Sophia Amaru, a tidal ecologist studying salinity cycles, frowned at her handheld tide gauge. Impossible, she whispered. The tidal draw should have begun before sunrise. Her colleague, Jaden Navarro, scanned the horizon. Wind is calm, but the sea level isn't shifting at all. That's the problem, Sophia murmured. This lagoon only stays healthy because the tide flushes it twice a day. Without that pulse, it stagnates. Sophia nodded. Coral stirred. She opened one amber eye and glanced at the horizon. Flamingos were acutely aware of water depth, even a few centimeters change shifted their feeding grounds. But today, the waterline sat exactly where it was last night, traced like a ruler mark around the lagoon's edge. She blinked again. Still no movement. The colony around her shuffled in confusion, murmuring in soft honks. Young flamingos peeped nervously, unused to the stiffness of the water and the quiet of the morning. Sophia crouched to touch the lagoon's surface. It was warm, warmer than it should have been. Jaden pointed at the sky. Cloud formations are wrong too. See how they're stretched? Like the wind tried to move them but couldn't. Sophia looked toward Coral, who stood perfectly centered above her own unmoving reflection. The lagoon isn't breathing, Sophia whispered. And neither was the tide. By midday, panic spread quietly through the colony. Flamingos paced in anxious circles, they lifted legs repeatedly, testing water depth. Some extended their wings as if preparing to take flight, yet hesitated. The air felt heavy, stagnant. Coral moved closer to the shoreline, watching the color gradient of the water. Normally, sunlight scattered differently as the tide changed salinity. But the pink hue was uniform today, unnaturally uniform. Sophia and Jaden set up portable sensors near the center of the lagoon. Salinity's rising, Jaden said. Slow but steady. No flushing from the tide, Sophia muttered. The lagoon is retaining everything. Like it's sealed. Jaden stirred the water with a pole. The ripple spread outward, sluggishly, then stopped before reaching the far side. Sophia inhaled sharply. Did you see that? The ripple died. Died? Ripples don't die. They dissipate normally across water. But this, she pointed, it's like the lagoon absorbed the motion. Coral dipped her head into the water, expecting drifting currents full of plankton. Instead, the taste was flat, stale, the flavor of water that had not mixed in too long. She shook her beak violently, spraying droplets onto the motionless surface. Behind her, a juvenile flamingo lost balance. Without the tide's push and pull, the mud beneath its feet dried differently, firmer in some areas, dangerously soft in others. The chick stumbled. A muddy sink formed instantly. It peeped frantically. Coral rushed across the shallows, wings half open. With a strong pull she lifted the chick out of the soft patch. Her reflection, and the chick's, remained perfectly sharp on the unmoving surface. No ripples at all. Jaden stared at the perfectly preserved reflections. The water's behaving like oil. No, Sophia whispered. Oil moves. This doesn't. They both turned toward the open sea beyond the sandbar. The sea was calm. Too calm. Where is the tide? Jaden asked. Sophia shook her head. The ocean can't just stop. But it had. And the lagoon was starting to feel the consequences. By what should have been late afternoon, something else went wrong, the light. It didn't dim. It didn't warm. It simply stayed. The sun marched across the sky, yes, but the lagoon's color, the brightness on the flamingo's feathers, the glint on the water, all remained eerily unchanged. Coral stepped carefully, glancing at the sky. Flamingos use the shifting angle of sunlight to judge feeding periods, migration cues, and rest cycles. But today, no change reached her. The colony sensed it too. Birds shuffled in restless patterns, uncertain when to eat, when to rest, when to preen. Their innate schedule had nothing to latch onto. Sophia held up a spectrometer. The reflected light from the lagoon isn't shifting wavelength. It's constant. Even as the sun moves? Jaden asked. Even then. That's not possible. Sophia sighed. It isn't. Yet here it is. Coral foraged near a patch of algae. She plunged her beak, filtered, lifted, but found far less food than expected. Without tidal movement, nutrients weren't being replenished. She honked in irritation. The mud beneath her feet exhaled a faint bubble, not from methane or trapped gas, but from pressure imbalance. The lagoon's bottom layer was beginning to compress. A wave of alarm calls cut across the colony. Several flamingos lifted off, but wobbled. The air felt dense, resisting wing beats. The wind did not respond. The water did not stir. The light did not shift. The entire lagoon was trapped in a moment. Jaden shaded his eyes. Sophia. Is this localized? Sophia opened her map. Reports from nearby inlets say their tides are weak today but not gone. So why us? Sophia looked at the center of the lagoon. At coral. At the many flamingos gathered nervously. At the warm, unmoving water. I don't think the ocean stopped, she murmured. I think the lagoon stopped. Something is holding it. The ground trembled faintly beneath them, not seismic, but rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. Slow. Deep. Growing stronger. Coral stiffened. The lagoon was not simply still. It was waiting. Around dusk, though the light didn't behave like dusk, the lagoon began to change again. Not at the surface. Below it. Sophia noticed first. Look at the suspended sediment levels. Jaden peered into the water. They're rising. But nothing is disturbing them. No waves, no currents. Sophia knelt, eyes widening. It's rising from the bottom. The lagoon's floor, a mix of silt, salt crust, and algae, was lifting by micrometers. Slowly, steadily. Pushing upward. Jaden swallowed. So the water volume is the same, but the depth is shrinking. Coral felt it in her legs. The soft mud beneath her compressed differently. She stepped again. A subtle buoyancy pushed against her foot. Then another. The bottom was moving. The colony erupted in uneasy honks. Birds began wading toward the deeper center, but the deeper center wasn't deeper anymore. The water rose in shallows, and fell in depths, like an inverted pulse. Jaden's voice shook. Sophia. Tides move water. But this is moving the ground. Sophia's breath caught. The lagoon floor is expanding. Like thermal swelling. But the temperature hasn't changed. Then what's causing it? Before she could answer, a deep rumble vibrated beneath the lagoon, long, low, and eerily controlled. Coral braced herself. The water did not move. The ground did. A dome-like bulge formed near the center, pushing flamingos off balance. Birds stumbled, wings flailing for stability. The colony panicked. Coral stood firm, legs trembling. Her feathers puffed with fear, but she stayed upright as the ground continued its slow rise. Jaden whispered, "It's like the lagoon is exhaling." Sophia stared. "No. It's preparing. Something's shifting the layers underneath. Pressure building. Reorganizing." But toward what? Sophia watched the dome swell a fraction more. Toward a reset, she whispered. It happened at twilight, false twilight, because the light still didn't dim. The lagoon floor reached its limit. The pressure stopped building. Silence settled over the pink water. Coral froze. Every bird froze. Even the insects halted. Then, a single pulse of energy traveled through the lagoon. The water did not rise. The ground did not crack. Instead, the lagoon flushed itself. A wave of cooler, deeper water surged upward from below, as if a hidden reservoir beneath the lagoon had opened. Pink algae scattered. Sediment lifted. The entire basin refreshed from the inside. For the first time in a full day, the water moved. Real movement. Natural movement. Flushing the stagnation away. Coral stumbled, then steadied, then honked in startled relief as ripples finally broke her reflection. Waves spread. Real waves. From ground source tide. Jaden laughed in disbelief. It wasn't the ocean. The lagoon had its own tide, trapped beneath sediment layers. Sophia nodded slowly. Pressure from below accumulated until it forced a self-cleansing pulse. But can this happen again? Sophia looked at the lagoon, now breathing normally again. Her expression darkened. It didn't fix the cause, she whispered. It only delayed the next failure. Coral watched the returning ripples, eyes bright. The world moved again. But she sensed the truth in her bones. The lagoon remembered stillness. And if the tide ever hesitated again, it might not return from below a second time. For a full day after the lagoon's strange self-flush, everything seemed to settle. Ripples returned. Wind skimmed the surface again. Flamingos fed normally, stirring algae into swirling pink clouds. Even the reflections, once unnervingly perfect, now wavered naturally. But Coral remained uneasy. She watched the water as the sun climbed the morning sky. Something felt off. The movement of the ripples seemed forced. Too consistent. Too evenly spaced. The lagoon looked like it was breathing normally, but the breath felt mechanical, not organic. She stepped forward, stirred the water with her foot, and watched the waves spread. Perfect concentric circles. Perfect speed. Perfect dissipation. She blinked. Real water wasn't perfect. Nearby, Sophia and Jaden were also noticing the subtle wrongness. Jaden reviewed tidal height measurements. Look at this, he said. The water level is rising and falling again. Sophia nodded. Yes. But with mathematical regularity. Exactly. He tapped the graph. Natural tides have micro-variations, wind, pressure, inertia. But this pattern? Perfect oscillations. Like the lagoon is trying to pretend the tide is back. Sophia inhaled sharply. A compensatory mechanism. Oh what? Some ecosystems, when deprived of a natural process, try to mimic it internally. But this, she gestured to the lagoon, this is too precise. Too coordinated. Jaden frowned. You are saying the lagoon learned the tide? No, Sophia said. The lagoon is rehearsing the tide. Coral waded deeper. The water pushed gently against her legs, steady, rhythmic, almost predictable. She paused. There it was again. A low tremor. Barely perceptible, but unmistakable. Coming from beneath the lagoon. The colony erupted into uneasy honks, lifting their heads in perfect unison. Flamingos had sensitive sensory organs in their legs, built to detect subtle shifts in water pressure. Every one of them felt it. A slow, steady pulse rising from the earth. Jaden looked alarmed. It's the same rhythmic pattern as before. Sophia's voice tightened. The sediment layer must be shifting again. But why now? Didn't the self-flush release the pressure? Sophia shook her head. No. It vented it. Temporarily. But the source remains. Coral stepped backward as the tremor grew, not stronger, but clearer. More intentional. Like a metronome guiding the lagoon's false rhythm. Then it happened. The lagoon's surface rose by a few millimeters, slowly, evenly, then fell again. A synthetic tide. Generated not by moon or ocean, but by the lagoon's own unstable substructure. The water swayed perfectly. Too perfectly. Unnervingly perfectly. Coral froze. The lagoon wasn't just moving. It was practicing. Trying to simulate tidal function, as if preparing for something much larger. Sophia whispered, the lagoon is learning how to breathe on its own. But what happens, Jaden asked quietly, when the practice ends? Coral looked at the water, her reflection rippling smoothly, mechanically. She didn't know. But she feared the rehearsal would end with something the colony couldn't survive. The next morning brought no wind. Not stillness, something worse. Anticipation. The air hung heavy, as though weighed down by something forming beneath the surface. Flamingos stood unusually close together, even those who normally kept distance. Coral approached the shallow center of the lagoon. The water was warm, too warm, and buzzing faintly through her sensitive foot pads. Jaden noticed the same thing. Heat distribution is off. The surface is normal, but the deeper layers are warming. Sophia set a probe into the water. Temperature gradient is inverting. Warm water below, cooler water above. That's backward. Yes, she whispered. And very dangerous. Coral dipped her head, tasting the water. It carried a faint metallic flavor, the same taste as before the first self-flush. She looked sharply toward Sophia and Jaden. The lagoon was preparing again. Sophia crouched. The false tide cycles stopped at dawn. No more perfect oscillations. That should be good, right? Jaden said. No, Sophia said. It means the lagoon's internal mechanism is switching modes. Switching to what? Sophia didn't answer. Because the lagoon answered for her. A tremor shot upward, not violent, but unmistakably vertical. The water column shuddered. Not the surface, the entire depth. Flamingos panicked, beating wings, stumbling in the shallows. Coral braced her legs and honked loudly, calling for the younger birds to follow her uphill. A group obeyed immediately, trusting her instincts. The lagoon vibrated again. This time the water rose, not uniformly, but in a mound, lifting from the center like something underneath was expanding upward. Jaden stared in horror. It's happening below the sediment layer. Something's pushing the entire lagoon upward. Sophia's breath caught. The pressure source. It's not discharging horizontally anymore. It's rising vertically, Jaden finished. Coral retreated with the others as the mound rose higher, only centimeters, but across the entire central basin. The lagoon was rising. Not because of the ocean. Not because of the moon. Not because of weather. But because something deep below was pushing against the earth, trying to force its way upward. Sophia whispered, the lagoon is trying to make room for something. Jaden stepped backward. Something coming from below. Coral froze, her eyes locked on the trembling, swelling water. She didn't know what wanted to rise. But she knew it was coming. And whatever it was stronger than the tide.